Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Muse's blog, where I answer your questions and talk about stuff I just feel like talking about. This week, we're going to finish up most of the questions I think from the last couple episodes, and then I guess I'll need more. And here to help me is Gandalf. Gandalf the Grey, not so wise, but incredibly sweet. I'm impressed you've read Yasha Kiden, Demon City Shinjuku, and Vampire Hunter D. What are your views on the animated movies? I actually haven't seen the animated films yet. I own them. I have Vampire Hunter D and Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, and I have Demon City Shinjuku, which I picked up before I picked up the books because I love, one, vampire stuff, and two, 80s, 90s anime art. It's my jam. I love it. I love that stuff. And I haven't watched them yet. I got them a couple months ago at an anime convention, probably. And just been busy. I'm really bad at watching stuff. Oh man, I get working and, I just put things on in the background so that I'm not having to focus on anything and I don't watch anything new. But I really love the Vampire Hunter D series. I haven't read Yasha Kiden yet because I know I'm going to want the whole series, and I only have books 1 through 5. That doesn't make sense. 1 and 5. So I know immediately I'm going to want to go online and buy them. So I've only read Vampire Hunter D, but they're very good. And I really love his style and his universe, and I really want all the other books. How do you find the info for the Silent Hill videos? A lot of patience and research. And it helps that I've been doing this for so long, and two, Silent Hill is a special community. Silent Hill is very well recorded. The people involved in this fandom have done a good job of keeping up with the magazines, the textures, the videos, the commercials. It's there to be found. I use Silent Hill Media is one website, Alchemilla Hospital, Silent Hill Historical Society, all have these great resources for the interviews and the demos, the E3 stuff. All of it comes from those websites. So when it comes to finding things specifically about Silent Hill, those websites are a lifesaver. I think it's cool you share a love for vampires. There's a TV show called Dark Shadows. Have you seen it? I haven't seen Dark Shadows. I have heard of it. I have seen the bad movie at least once in my life. And funny enough, read a fanfic adaptation of the plot of the bad movie to a TV show. That's my experience with this franchise, is that trail of thought. I haven't watched it, again, because I'm really bad at watching new things. I get into my zone, and I'm working, and I'll put on Mystery Science Theater, or Whose Line Is It Anyway? Sort of like mindless stuff that won't distract me while I'm researching. I have to actually really focus and make myself sit down and watch something new. I actually sat down tonight and watched the Ant-Man and the Wasp with my mom, which turned out to be really fun. I really liked it. Are you a fan of games like Outlast, where you don't have the option to fight back? Or do you like some level of control in scary games? I probably would enjoy it to some extent, but I think my favorite's always going to be sort of a balance between games where you can fight back and games where you're not supposed to or you can't. Like Silent Hill feels like a good medium where you're really weakened, but you can fight if you have to. Resident Evil sometimes is very overwhelming to me because there's so much fighting. Outlast, the fact that you can't fight at all, stresses me out sometimes. I enjoy that as well. I just don't play it as much because it is, stressful, and I play games to relax for the most part. What do you think about the letter at the end of Silent Hill 2? How did he get that? Gareth and I were talking about that on his stream of Silent Hill 2 that we're doing every Friday at 3 p.m. EST. We were talking about whether or not the Mary that he meets in town is really Mary or if it's just a manifestation of Mary. And I think there's clues to both sides of the argument. But either way, I think the letter is something he receives from Mary, and either is a literal letter that she wrote and never had the chance to give him, or is a sort of a manifestation of her feelings towards him at the end of her life. Either way, I think it really is from her, and it's a truthful and honest, but it might not be like a real letter. It might be magic from the Silent Hill. Which version of the vampire mythos would you say is the most plausible, and which is your personal favorite? There's so many variations, a lot of which have a lot of things in common but with slight tweaks, that it's hard for me to say my absolute favorite. I love Tanya Huff. Tanya Huff has some good books, but she has this thing in her books where vampires don't coexist well. So say one character turns another character that they were friends when it was a human and a vampire, but now that they're both vampires, they don't get along. And it's used to create some interesting conflict in the book, but personally, if I were writing a vampire story, I wouldn't include that just because it limits a lot of what you can do with your vampires. Anne Rice has a lot of very weird, arbitrary rules to hers as well. I think at one point she said that the vampires have no internal organs. She kind of changes over the years, and her rules seem to shift. I tend to lean towards the vampires have a aphrodisiac in their teeth or their blood or their saliva, because otherwise, like, I feel like you'd fight back. And it kind of plays with the whole idea of vampires are so sexual and, like, people would enjoy. I've read some fiction where, like, there's a society where people actually will willingly let vampires drink from them because it feels good, which I think that's that would be an interesting way for a society to develop in a world where there were vampires. That would totally happen. Have you played any Castlevania games? Have you ever heard of Thomas Covenant series? I haven't played any Castlevania games, and I really want to now because I just finished the Netflix series, which is so good. And I know I'll be disappointed when I play the games and they're not exactly the same. But it's kind of it's a universe I've always thought was interesting, but not a gameplay style that I like. So I'm leaning towards trying the PS3 games that looked a little more like the kind of games that I would play, and I've heard they're decent, so I think I want to give them a shot. Yeah, the TV show, if you haven't watched it, amazing, and I need more immediately. I haven't heard of that author, but I will definitely check that out. Do you have any plans to make videos addressing the possible influences on the series? Yes, I actually started the Lit Class series where I would talk about the books that inspired the series, and I only made one about Crime and Punishment because I don't read. It's so hard to make myself sit down and actually read a book front to back and work on that because it's so much work on top of the research. It's been tough. I did finally get through finishing Alice in Wonderland. So next step is to replay Silent Hill 1 because that's the game that's really tied very heavily to Alice in Wonderland. And then that'll probably be my next video for Lit Class. Could you show us what you have and talk about your favorite series in your manga collection? I would love to. First up, we have The Ancient Magus Bride, which is the story of a magic witch, a young girl who has magical powers, who is sold by some pretty awful people, and ends up being taken in by a magic creature as his apprentice. It's a really interesting sort of mystery story with a lot of mythology and folklore, specifically Irish and British, and it's really, really good. I highly recommend it. Then we have the first 10 or so books of Blue Exorcist, in which a young man finds out that he is the son of the devil, and he wants to become an exorcist so that he can defeat him. If you're noticing a pattern of stories that are influenced by folklore and mythology, well, you've hit the nail on the head. Then we have The Case Study of Vanitas, which first stood out to me because of its gorgeous watercolor artwork. Like, the covers are just amazing and beautiful. These are vampire stories set in a steampunk Victorian era kind of alternate reality that are really well written and so beautiful. Here we have Devils and Realist, which is the story of a British student who finds out that he is the reincarnation of Solomon, and it is his duty to decide who will be the next king of hell. More stuff influenced by religion and myth, and it's all good. These are actually some novels for the series Durarara, which is another story influenced by myth and folklore. With sort of magical fantasy characters side by side with gang wars and technical things all set in Shibuya. It's a really interesting story with a lot of neat characters. Frau Faust is a retelling of the story of Faust with a female character, written by the same person that writes The Ancient Magus Bride. And it is another very cool sort of mystery story with fantasy creatures and historical setting. And then, of course, we have Full Metal Alchemist, which we all should know. An amazing series that remains one of my favorites of all time. Gangsta and Gangsta Cursed, which are the story of a group of criminals, basically, who have been struggling to survive in this city where all the world's criminals or magic creatures are sort of locked in together. They're not really magic creatures, but there's superhuman people here. and they're all having to try and struggle and survive together. Dictatorial Grimoire is a short series that caught my eye because it had, again, fairy tales in it. Hellsing is one of the best manga I've ever read. It is a vampire story that deals with Nazis and war and all this kind of dark violence stuff. It's really good. Kami-sama Kiss is the story of a young woman that inherits a shrine and kind of becomes the shrine goddess. It's a love story and a comedy, kind of in the vein of Inuyasha, if Inuyasha had less fighting. And then we have all the Kingdom Hearts manga and novels that have been published as of today. Magia the Ninth is a short series that I guess was canceled or just completed early and the author moved on, where the characters are the sort of reincarnations of famous musicians, and they have magic powers. It was neat, and I'm sad it ended. Monster is the story of a surgeon that saves the life of a boy who grows up to be a serial killer. It's very dark and really delightful. Then we have some of My Hero Academia, a sweet story about a bunch of young kids trying to be heroes and their journey to being heroes. It's really good. A lot of Naruto. I kind of dropped out of the series after Shippuden, but I'm still fond of the original series, and I have some of the novels as well. If you can't tell, I'm kind of fond of the Uchihas. Olympus is a one-shot that is about the Greek myths and specific characters. It's really pretty. Then there's Oh My Goddess, which is a love story of a guy that accidentally summons a goddess, and she sort of becomes his servant, but they eventually sort of end up being like live-in boyfriend-girlfriend kind of. It's just basically a romantic comedy. Pet Shop of Horrors. It's a mystic story I haven't quite finished, but basically pet shop that has a bunch of magic creatures and monsters and things. It's really neat. The first of the Pokemon Adventures manga, which is a sort of more a serious adaptation of the Pokemon concept, especially since Pokemon literally die in this one. It's good. A lot of Rurouni Kenshin. I grew up loving this series, and I'm still kind of really addicted to this era of history and fiction that deals with it, so I have a lot of things set in this period. Sayuki is a sort of punk rock retelling of the story of the journey to the West. It's sad and dark and yet hopeful and deals a lot with friendships and pain and life, and it's so hard to describe, but it's so good, and you should all read it. And there's a bunch of sequels. I only have Reload, but there's like 2 more. The Seven Princes of the Thousand-Year Labyrinth is a story of a kingdom where the ruler is chosen by putting a bunch of dudes in a labyrinth and saying, here you go, you gotta get out. And it's pretty neat. I've enjoyed it so far, and I like the art. There's the first book of Trigun, which is a series I greatly enjoy and highly recommend. The manga is vastly different than the anime, but they're both good. And of course, there's Vampire Hunter D. I have maybe a third of the series. It's gotten really long. But it's a really good story that deals with vampirism in a post-apocalyptic future. There's also Yashikiden, which is another series by the same author that kind of has a more modern vampire story. And I just picked up Dark Side Blues, which is another book by the same guy. Haven't read it yet. The Tale of Medjai Dracula is another of his, and I adore it. That one is so good. Your Name, the movie, adapted to the book. The book is brilliant. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Gotta love Yu-Gi-Oh! The manga's so much darker than the show, guys. Ooh, it's dark. And one manga of Yu Yu Hakusho, which is one of my favorite anime of all time, and I wish I actually owned the manga, but oh well, what can you do? Well, that's everything. All the questions answered, and I guess I need more of them. So please, if you have any questions or anything you want to hear me talk about, anything you're curious to know about me, just let me know in the comments. Just to close things up here today, you can now become a member of my channel on YouTube. You pay $4.99 a month and you get to be part of special members-only streams, members-only viewing nights for movies like the movies that inspired Silent Hill, and maybe some anime. It's up to y'all. We're going to pick it together. There's emotes you can use during streams, and there's going to be more stuff coming in the future that's going to be members only. I also now have a sponsorship with Gamer Grind Co. Get your grind on. This is gamer-themed coffee that looks really good. I cannot wait to try it. They also have merchandise. They have some really cute mugs and esports stuff. It's really neat, and you should check it out. Use the coupon code TheGamingMuse for 5% off. Thanks. thank you guys for watching, and be sure to leave questions for next time, or I'll just have to go on a long rant about Inuyasha. It's the first thing I saw when I looked over there. I'm just going to tell you all about my feelings about the game and movie. Oh yeah, Inuyasha has a really good video game. I should stream that. Ha ha ha. See you guys next time.